Alright, the horn on the Urals, the little factory horn, wasn't quite loud enough, so we decided to get the Denali SoundBomb here. And we got the air horn, and I did go ahead and order the wiring harness. And before I show you the horn and installing it and all, I wanted to show you the wiring harness. In retrospect, I could have got along without it by just buying the connectors and the wiring and doing it myself, but it does give you a nice plug-in, and the relay comes with the horn, but it maps everything out for you. And I did modify it to better fit the Ural and what I wanted. This is all the leftover wiring. It was much longer, but I'll show you what I did here. The first thing I'll note is that the wire here that goes to the ground, originally that ran all the way from where it connects to the horn up, back down, and came out next to the positive battery wire here, came out here. So the intent was to hook both of these to the battery. And I changed that. I'm going to pick up chassis ground where the old horn was mounted, and this will be good. But the relay mounts up under the front of the fuel tank. There's plenty of room up there on the rail, and I'll show you where that goes. This runs out, connects to chassis ground. All I had to do was replace this connector with one large enough for the bolt. This is where you pick up your existing horn so that when you push the button, it makes a connection, closes the relay, and it allows power to go out to the horn. And then these are the horn connectors. And this is measured and fit like I have these bikes set up. I can give you those dimensions real quick. This is not changed. This is the same length it was out of the box. And that is about, if you're curious, that's about 30 inches long. Again, I didn't modify the positive pickup. This I did cut a lot of the excess off of. This is what connects to the actual air horn. That's about 22 inches or so. And then the part that connects to the existing horn relay, about 17 inches. This could be much shorter. I'm going to bundle it up under there now that I've done it. But I'm not going to go back and make this any shorter. In reality, I could have chopped this way down up to here if I wanted to. So if you do yours, just pay attention to that and adjust it any way you want. And the ground for the air horn comes from here up, and I just brought it out up here next to the relay to pick up the chassis ground like I mentioned before. So that's how I modified the harness to fit on the bike. Okay, the Tourist I've finished the install on, and I'll show you details on the Patrol once I get the wiring harness installed without the tank on so you can see it. But it's all set up on here, and the way that I mounted the horn on both rigs was I actually had an extra set of leg guards. These really don't cost that much in the first place, but it came with the leg guard bracket, and I got to looking at that. That actually made a good mount for the horn. I just turned it around, put it up here so that it clamps to the frame. I did have to drill the hole out here slightly larger for the bolt that came with the horn, and it just slides in there, kind of a U-bolt here. This is actually open on the bottom on the air horn itself. It slides down and then you tighten it down and it stays. Now, looking at that design, I wasn't overly confident. This has been on here actually for a couple of 100 miles now, and it is not loosened. I put it on here intentionally and rode around with it just to see how it would do first. Hasn't offered to move, it's staying in place. But if you'll notice, I did run a zip tie through the horn, and then I ran another zip tie around this one and put it through the hole in the bracket. The idea being that if this were to fail for any reason, if this horn came off, it would be hanging by these zip ties, and that's why those are on there, just to kind of keep it safe. And you can see I've done the same thing on the Patrol. Put the bracket on, a little piece of actually heater hose here I split to make sure it had a good grip on the frame of the bike. Same thing, same zip ties, and it's very solid. It's not going anywhere. And this one I put on here, it's probably ridden about 50 miles where it's at on the Patrol. And now it's time to get the wiring hooked up so that it works. That's the way that it's up there. Okay, I laid the harness in like it's going to be hooked up. The first thing, there's a little bit of excess back here so that you can still get to the fuse. This will connect to the positive of the battery and it'll just lay under the seat. This makes it real easy to get out of the way to get the battery out or whatever needs to be done. I didn't like shoving everything back here. I could have put the relay and everything back here and run everything up front, but then I have even less space in here, and if you've changed a battery on a Ural before, you already know it's kind of a tight fit, and I didn't want to add to that. And you can see it runs out the bottom. I basically am going to follow the existing wiring path up under the frame that goes under the fuel tank. I will pull this into this channel, run it through and route it and zip tie it. I'll also zip tie the relay and the socket here in place a little bit, not making it so that it's dead firm, but just keeping it in place. There's plenty of room under the fuel tank here. This was all empty, and then this will run over and plug into the sound horn itself. This I bring out on this side. I pull the wires off the horn and bring them back. I actually plug this in and shrink wrap them to help protect them, and then zip tie them over here under the tank to this side of the frame. And then this is the ground. When I take this horn off, the old horn, I will reuse this bolt as chassis ground for the new horn. That's how it all gets hooked up. It's fairly simple to do. The most difficult part of the whole job is taking the fuel tank on and off and on, honestly. And that's not a big deal, but you do have to drain the fuel out of it to do it. You probably could install this without taking the fuel tank off if you wanted to, especially if you put the relay back under the seat or on top of the battery. It wouldn't be too much of a problem. You would want to still get up under there and kind of zip tie it and secure it, but I suppose if you wanted to do that, it would be possible, but I wanted to get the relay up front out of the way of the battery. Okay, so here it is all wired up. Try to show you as much of it as I can. We got the battery connector in. It just runs up there, and it's plenty of free play to get the battery out. Not an issue there. You can see I just zip tied it to the same connectors that were holding the ignition wires and all in. I've not really taken a different path, except here I did come out on the left instead of on the right where everything else is. Runs up. This is tucked in. Got our chassis ground there. You just run over and run down to the bottom of the horn itself. And then I mentioned that this didn't need to be as long, we discovered. Here is the horn relay. See if I can get over here so you can see it a little better. And I shrink wrap these because they're just push connectors, so I put them in and shrink wrapped them. This is the original horn wire. I pulled it back into the frame, took some of it up. Off the connector here in the relay, I also took some of that up. You can see why it needed to be shorter. Originally, I had thought that I would need to come out, go over, come down, and connect it out here, because it just didn't occur to me that I could pull the horn wire back into the frame. I was expecting it to need to get out here, but that's not a problem. This works. And it's all tucked out of the way, so it's ready for the fuel tank to go back on. I'll turn the key on here and give the horn a quick blast, make sure it works. Yep, that works. So we're good to go. Time to put it back together and go ride down the road. And there we have it, all back together and ready to ride. First, what the factory horn sounds like from 5 feet. Now the Denali sound horn from 5 feet.